Whitewater is nothing to do with water. It's a metaphor that if you want to succeed, you need your people to go faster than the flow, much as you do when you're whitewater rafting. So no welly boot adverts, please. Now, we're a leadership firm. We coach and we work in the financial sector more than any other sector, which was never intentional. But it's always word of mouth. You get taken from the one to the next. And at the end of 2008, we thought, what did we do? However, we still work largely with the financial sector, but also BBC. We're just doing a women's programme for oil and gas, where they want all women to be developed, which is fantastic. So that's what Whitewater does.
My background is heavily psychological, but I've worked in business for a very long time. But I sometimes do feel I'm trying to practice the black arts. You know, it's psychology, you employ people. There may be some clues in there, but it's still a fairly closed book to many people. So I was gaily going along, doing, a great job, loving the work, when somebody said, what are you doing for women? And I said, women are great. And we'll tailor things to our clients. What do you mean, women? And I looked around and I was working wall to wall with senior men. I'm really enjoying it. They're fabulous. You work, forgive me men, I will stereotype you in the room, but you get a man into coaching and it's wonderful because it's like pouring water in a desert. Suddenly they can talk about all the things that they've got to be manly about the rest of the time. So love my job. But I was shocked to see the dearth of women there. Especially when I'd started my career setting up classes at Glasgow University for women, all sorts of things. So in our evidence-based fashion, where we had a variety of books, what we went and did was set up a research programme, which led to this book. We basically asked 25 scary senior women about their experiences, and did some research with LSE, with a lot of other women looking at, and because it's in a coaching series, I'm the editor of it, it had to be from the coaching angle, but looking at what it takes for women to succeed. But I want to go back to the title, Women in Success. I think we need to keep checking how we're defining that, because I think the past interpretation of success hasn't actually made for joyful men. It's a high incidence of heart attack and stroke. Are we getting it right? So our success really needs to be defined for each one of us. What is it we want? People often say women, they're not ambitious. Trust me, women are ambitious. They may be polite, they may use aspirational words, but women are ambitious. They're not always ambitious for the same things. And that's quite important. And I think we're also quite prepared to walk and move if we're not getting the things we need. But the other part of the title was, what will it take? How are we doing? What will it take? And we're about to embark, because that book, the research was done about 10 years ago, before that book. And we suddenly thought, 10 years, there will have been a lot of difference. The world will have changed. And we're going out to test that one. We have all sorts of preliminary findings, but we're going to test that. Because if you remember Rosie the Riveter, it's been an overused, but it's a delightful image. They all thought they'd come back and be welders and pilots and goodness knows all what happens of industry post-World War II, but of course men needed to be rebuilt. And with advertising and appliances available, it was a real badge of office to keep your woman at home with a twin tub. I don't think even twin tubs were invented then, but whatever the allegedly labour-saving gadget was. So have we done it? Are we there? Is it working? Is my question. And in a way today I want to annoy you, maybe inspire you, but probably irritate the life out of you, because I'm known as an optimist, but I'm not sure I'm in my most optimistic framework about this. I'm optimistic in that with optimists, and it's an impossible task, you have to beat them off with a stick because they'll keep trying. So I'm slightly in that mode at the moment. So are we there yet? Well, this is the image that I often put up for women and their success. Down at the foundations, lots of them. But as each year and each 5 years passes, we have fewer and fewer up at the top. And I don't see a huge change here, especially when we are 51% of the adult population, which is why I find it tricky to talk about diversity. Because the last time I looked, and you might be better with numbers, 51% is the majority. And this is not to put down any diverse group, but I think sometimes everything being called diversity just emphasises we're all different. Rather than we are a force in this room. There is a force for change, there is a force for positivity and growth and development. And we're not some, strange over here, little bit of a problem that we have. Now, the speed of change is the thing that has interested me, because people say it's organic, it'll all happen, just give it time. Okay, this was my first speech, and we came across the newspaper cutting for it, and I remember it because I'd been phobic. Some people wish I still was, and would shut up. I was phobic, and I trained myself, and this was Glasgow Herald, as it was then, their bicentennial, and I'd said yes. And then when I said, how many? 350, 400, okay. And I still remember. I remember what I was wearing, I remember what I was saying. I remember the really eminent women on the stage beside me. And they were arguing at that point for 50% representation in business and parliament. 50%. 50, not 51, they weren't being greedy, but 50. Now, when do you think that was? Judging by the very small print, the date's up there, but I bet you can't see it. When do you think that was? How long ago? This dates me terribly. In 1983, we thought 50% was fair, and that's what we were going for. So I feel a personal burden of responsibility that we, my generation, and you can work out how old I am, we screwed up. Because we all got busy, we all got working, we all thought we were as good as anybody, and we stopped pushing. We got fed up with being narky, constantly picking on things and saying, not fair. 1983, so if you think growth happens eventually, maybe we need to reconsider that and think about what we're going to do. Now, about 10 years ago, Lord Davis introduced the 25% on boards. Now, we were never sure why he went for 25%, because we know it takes at least a third to be any real tipping point. And I think it's a little bit like vegetables. We were told we should eat 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. And then, of course, the data came out, and you should eat about 10. But health education says, well, if you say 10 to people, they'll just give up. Whereas you say 5, they'll maybe eat 3. Well, I've got a feeling it was a wee bit like that. We could have said 50%, but they said 25 so that nobody got too scared. But that was a board level. And the 30% club also weighed in and looked to get the numbers up. So things have been happening. They're questionable sometimes in terms of the success. We always said, but if you don't have a pipeline, you put a woman on the board, fantastic. If it's a lone woman on the board for any length of time, what hope does she have? So we always wondered why it was 25%. But hey, you've got to reward any move in the right direction. Except the minute you take your foot off that brake, or the foot off that accelerator, let's say, things slow down again. I was working with universities, and they had set about getting 25% of VPs to be women. And so when they got there, they disbanded. 2 years later, only 16% were women. Because if women don't stay, you backfill with a man, because we've done women before. So if you're not pushing forward, you are stagnating, or just go back to 1983, you may be going backwards. Because then we had that lull where nobody would admit, well, I always did, nobody would really admit to being a feminist because it was a bad word. So that was 1983. I just have to talk about yesterday, because I was on the BBC talking about Lloyds. Have you seen the report? Yeah? It's a damning report, and other information came out in March. 18 women had come forward, and they're the brave ones. But I posted something about this, and a dear friend of mine came on saying, yes, but There are 45,000 employees and only 6,000 responded. Yeah, okay. I know a lot of the backstories. I know about the young woman who's tiny compared to me, who had a beer stein smashed in her face by her boss's boss at Oktoberfest. Her entire male team said nothing, presumably too drunk to do anything, but I think actually too in the thrall of the boss. Did she report it to HR? Of course she didn't, because her lawyers said, you have not a hope in hell and it will be a horrific experience. And this wasn't Lloyds per se, this was a brokerage. And they said, they will put you through the mill, so women stay stumm. So whatever the numbers there are, it has to be worse, much worse. And I think somewhere I compared it to Jeremy Kyle. I spoke to a psychiatrist who said any of these reality television programs, terrible things are talked about, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. They're talking about that because they're not talking about what's much, much worse. So, as I say, it's not particularly in my nature to be pessimistic and shroud-waving, but this is yesterday. And I always hasten to point out we're not the problem. In the corporate world, we're technically the disadvantaged. You rarely set the disadvantaged to solve a problem. But come on, women, we've got to do it for ourselves. In our research, we came up with some of the core things that contribute to women being held back. Now, this is not a let's blame a woman, a woman's place is in the wrong. It's just saying you are in a male environment. And all of these senior women I interviewed, when they talked about politics, games, they had a kind of curl of the lip in disdain, trained observer of body language. It was always disdain. And you had to say, but if you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? I know you're not even in the same playing field, but you've got to get in the game somehow. And one of the things which comes up all the time is confidence. I think it comes up all the time because women will talk about it. And we are not craven scaredies. In fact, if a woman knows her stuff, I think she can be arrogant and powerful. The problem is if a woman isn't entirely sure she knows her stuff, she will hold back opinion. Now, that can be quite good, but in a room full of other people taking a punt, men perhaps being braver to express an opinion they'll be forming as they discuss it, women holding themselves back in this way does affect their careers. So, we have to look at confidence, but it's situational. There are tremendously confident women, and I'll come on to the fact that there are many men who suffer from confidence issues. Networks. Now, this is something that women sometimes struggle with, not about making friends, making connections, they're really good at that, but making strategic connections that they will then network with for their own advancement and the other person's. They're often diffident. Talk about Machiavellian. Men are much more skilled at saying, can you help me in this? Or I know a guy who can. And asking, what's the worst that could happen? They could say no. And they usually don't. And so strategic networks, having role models. We run quite often role model evenings, bringing some kick-ass women from different streams of work. They never think they're role models, they always are. And we get them to just sit up front and talk about how they did it. Because for more junior women, it's sometimes completely opaque, because they don't see women ahead of them. Or if they see women, they're not always women they can identify with. Because one of the things that came out of our research is how heterogeneous women are. I mean, just look at us. We like dresses, we like trousers, we don't like clothes at all. We want babies, we don't want babies, we want to stay at home, we want to do this, we want to embroider, but we'll never tell anybody. All of that. And it's so easy to stop there being any groundswell with women because we're easily pitted against each other. And the day, and I tell this with great pride, the day that my first daughter got a first, and then my second daughter messaged me to say she got a first at university, I started a tweet that was a Yaboo sucks, working mother's rule kind of tweet. And coming from Scotland, modesty is what you're meant to have about your children. I am so proud of my daughters. And I thought, I can't send that tweet. I do not want to put a woman down who has made another choice. even if I, deep down, might think she's made a bad one. But it was just that moment where I think because of how the media portrays us, we're always opposed to each other. So we need role models and networks where we can be a force together in agreement. I think the narrowness of the options for men is crippling for them. But you've got to be a good soldier, you've got to be brave, you've got to suck it up, you've got to work hard, you've got to maybe not enjoy it, but keep going, all of that. So you keep going to the next job. It's not fun. But there are role models all around them, sometimes trapping them. Women also want the whole deal. And we keep being told we can't have it. Well, we want it all. And this comes back to positive psychology that says what we need is the whole life. What are all of the things that answer us? So that might be children, or it might be sport, or it might be what have you. We're not as prepared to sacrifice our lives. And millennials and following generations all want the same. We're looking ahead and saying success that deprives you of intimacy and connection is not a success we want. And resilience, because as it stands, women still have a likelihood to be doing almost 2 full-time jobs. Things may be changing, they may not. But resilience is really important, not least because I think women worry a great deal more about things. And I'm saying women, and I'm going across generations here. I'm working with women in film at the moment. It's the 4th series of leadership programs for these women in film. They're fantastic. They're young, and every blooming one of them suffers from anxiety and worry, and they're driving themselves mad about everything. And I don't want them to be devoid of feelings, but we're doing quite a lot of challenging some of the thinking that they have and the beliefs that underpin it. And we do worry more than men about many of those things. And then career planning. You sometimes do need to look ahead more and make some significant plans, not just because of how other people will be making assumptions about plans for you if you don't. And finally, one thing, the sort of lone woman, the fact that one person gets onto a team and we think, well, that's it, hey. That one woman has an upward struggle and there's little that she can do until, as I say, she's got about a third there. And my slogan, my shortest version of an elevator speech I ever did was, what are you doing, Averil? I'm changing the world one woman at a time. So you get really great women into more senior, some very senior positions. And then the time would come when they say, stuff this for a game of soldiers. I am never going to change this bank. I'm leaving. I'm going out for more money to somewhere else. And my job is to get them doing what it is they need to do. But there's part of you thinking, no, hang on till we get some more there, and then we'll really change the culture. Because sure as anything, this is not fast enough. And so we need to be completely together in this, that we need to be supporting. And when we run women's leadership programs, we make demands of women in a way that they will bring another woman up. They will talk to their line manager, and we find that they impact on average about 11 other people. But that is their remit, that they're not just working for themselves, because selfless women, we're not just out for ourselves. There's competition, but there's also collaboration, and we bring others with us, because we've got to be in this together. But what about men? Now, I didn't want to objectify them, but I very foolishly put men images. And thankfully, all I got was torsos. It could have been much worse. Lots of amazing abs, not that I looked. Plus one attempt to be more diverse. And Justin Baldoni with a t-shirt on. Now, if you know who he is, you'll know that's not normal. And I'm going to leave him there for a moment. So let me talk a little bit about men. Because as I said, they've been some of my favourite clients forever. And more often than not, you're sitting with a very senior person, very senior, better not name their roles or their titles, and he goes, is this it? I've done it. I've jumped the hoops. I've got the money. I don't need the next £1 million bonus. I remember somebody saying to me in a lift, I want meaning, that guy said. But then he followed up with, but I'm going to die, because in my firm, if you retire, you die within 18 months. And you're just like, oh dear, there's optimism for you. So many men have given themselves to the cause, have got there, and they're lonely. never let on. It's only behind closed doors with an absolute written in blood confidentiality agreement that you'll find out that it's not really success for them. And there's a lot of anxiety, I'm told. And I know somebody who wrote a PhD on this topic, a thesis on this topic, that how are you meant to be a man in 2019? Women talk about this stuff all the time. Not how men are to be men, but how women are to be women and how they do things. Men are just suddenly meant to be alpha male in certain contexts. And then the guy with the baby or the puppy that you think is so cute, they're meant to have amazing bodies, they're meant to be getting plastic surgery. Suddenly, there is a lot of anxiety out there. So they may get to rule the world, but it may not actually be that enjoyable. And my real concern is what insights many of the men we're dealing with in trying to get change and gender equality, we do not get clear insight as to what's in their mind and what beliefs underpin what they're doing. I'll come back to that. This week alone, and it's not the first time, I've had a man say to me, I'm not getting in a room alone with that woman, I know about Me Too. Okay. So, you're her line manager. So I'm actually setting up a kind of marital therapy so that they can be in a room together and not whatever his fear is. And I've heard wives saying to husbands, oh, your time is over, it's all women now, they're not at work. They're saying you'll never get promotion now. And we were working on sponsorship, not mentoring, sponsorship in a bank with investment bankers, big personalities. And they all said, I could not walk across the floor in the dealing room or wherever and talk to a woman. I'd be teased mercilessly by my peers. Oh God, we're back at high school? Because everybody nudged the expectation, and in some places the reality is, sponsorship means, hey, we might end up in a relationship. But I think one of the effects, and I'm dealing with film people and I'm hearing about amazing consequences of Me Too, but one is political correctness, that people don't say things out loud anymore, so you do not know what's going through their mind. Everybody's learned vocabulary. Everybody says the right thing. My premise is beliefs haven't changed one iota, and none of us knows what our beliefs actually are. And there are lots of exercises I could do that show you that you hold all sorts of bonkers beliefs that probably came from your granny. And they drive you, but you don't actually test, is this still relevant in this day and age? One of my senior clients who left a big bank, and she was basically responsible for what happened in branches on the high street, whether you had them or not. Big strategy piece, well paid. And her peer, when she said she was leaving, he said, oh yeah, but your husband's got a great job, so you must just work for pin money. And when I fed this back to the bank, they kind of put their head in their hands, but no, he didn't say that. Well, at least he was honest enough to say it out loud. Every time there are redundancies and there are more women in the lists, we know deep down men believe that they've got a man looking after them. Bless them. But the one area where there was complete disparity was whether it was a female-friendly organisation. And the nice men know women are great, assume they choose to be there or not. They do not realise that women do not like the culture. And they never find out, because women rarely tell them, because often there's a sense of learned helplessness. What is the point? I was working with board of directors, and the woman eventually said, it's like going into the common room at school. If you can't shout louder than everybody else, you haven't got a chance. And many women in the organisation did. That was in an asset management company. And this is not out of badness. There are lots of diversity words all over the place. They feel the issue's been addressed. And women have a greater tendency to notice all sorts of things. Ask a woman to look for something, different brain. But they notice things, like people blagging about how the results will be. And the woman in this bank was saying, they're lying. They can never make those results. And her boss says, men, They just blag. In this spirit, are we not meant to be going for integrity and honesty and transparency? Not really, no. Women get more guilty and worried about leaving things, not getting things done, about where their position is. And above all, there's a terribly wrong understanding about why women leave. They're not going home to make cupcakes. They're going to your competition, probably for more money. Women often leave because they don't believe they can get on. They may not have truly tested it, and we will always push women to really ask for everything they want rather than assume you won't get it. But they never tell the truth in exit interviews. They lie or dissemble. Because they say, I don't want to block my name in the industry. Why should I give them the benefit of my knowledge when they haven't wanted to know before? So it's only, in our case, where you take a woman out for a good quality cup of coffee, you get all the honesty. Didn't even take alcohol to get all these insights. It all comes tumbling out when it's not going to HR. I'm sorry. They know what HR is meant to be doing. They don't trust them to have their back, so they don't tell the truth. So, putting this together, I think the big thing we have to look at is our beliefs and what beliefs other people have. And our brains are full of stuff. We have to battle everyday sexism. This is an advert I saw in the magazine the other night and went ballistic. You spend Saturday standing on the sidelines, but you can look great doing it. Marks and Spencer's. And I was running a 5K that Saturday. No man was going to come and watch me. And secondly, nobody was going to tell him what to wear to look cute on the sidelines. So there are fundamentals, which I would call the hygiene factors. You do all this stuff. But you know, the really key thing is people do stuff. People label stuff. They have policies. But are we truly changing? And if we're not, how do we get into that belief structure? And I've got a kind of tendency to say, we ask for 50%. Why, when you're appointing and recruiting now, don't you just always take a woman and find a good one? There are plenty of them there. Take a good one till you're done, till you're 40 or 50%. That's it. We would probably sort it in a year or so. So take action. And in the words of an extremely sexist and sexually manipulative song, a little less conversation, a little more action. And women, we need to be doing it for ourselves. And I forgot to say at the start, we have a kind of naked exhibition stand out there. We need you and your research and your ideas to kind of paper that with issues, questions, problems, solutions. And we want it all from you. So please come and talk to us and argue with us. Thank you.